Imagine losing 5 of your kids in a house fire, only to later realize that the fire was a ruse to kidnap them. This is one of the most mysterious disappearances in history. Let's get into the Sodder family case. Christmas Eve 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia, George and Jenny Sodder and their 9 children were asleep in their home. A fire broke out at around 1 a.m. It was said to be caused by faulty wiring. George, Jenny, and 4 of the kids made it out, but the 5 other children did not. The 5 children all slept in the upstairs bedrooms, and George did everything to get his kids out of the house. He re-entered the house, but the stairs were engulfed in flames. He then tried to go and get his ladder, but it wasn't where it usually was. Someone had moved it. His final attempt to save them was by starting up his coal trucks so he could drive them next to the house and get in through the windows. But both of the trucks weren't working, despite them working the night before. One of their older kids went to the neighbors to get them to call the police station, but no one picked up. Someone had to go and physically find the fire chief. Despite the fire department only being 2.5 miles away, it took them 7 hours to get to the Sodder house. By the time they got there, the house was ash. There was basically nothing left. It had burned down in 45 minutes, which is a very short period of time for a normal house fire. The site was searched extensively for bones and remains, and none were found. Not a single bone fragment. It was thought at first that maybe the fire was so hot that it fully cremated all the bodies, but further research was done and that was not possible. There would be something left. Some household appliances survived the fire. They were in bad shape, but they survived it, and it was proven that if those had survived, some bone would as well. Death certificates were created for all 5 children, and to the community, this was one big tragedy. But George and Jenny started realizing that things weren't right, and they started theorizing that this wasn't an accident, but arson, and that their kids had been kidnapped. Now I'm going to tell you some suspicious evidence that kind of backs up their story. First of all, George had the wiring checked only months prior to the fire, and it was checked off and deemed to be safe. Weeks prior to the fire, the kids were saying that they were being watched by these men. There was a weird phone call the night of the fire, which I will get into in part 2. The rest of the evidence is insane. I'll post it the moment it's finished. Part 2 of the missing Sodder children. An hour before the fire broke out, Jenny was awoken by a phone call. When Jenny picked up, the person on the other end asked for a name that she didn't recognize, so she said, "Sorry, wrong number," and just as she was gonna hang up, there was a strange laugh on the other end of the phone. She also noticed that the lights hadn't been turned off, and it was Christmas Eve, so she allowed the kids to stay up late that night, but they told her that they'd turn everything off before going to bed. This light is important because if it was a fire due to faulty electrics, the electrics shouldn't have been working. The family also said that they saw lights on in the house while the fire was burning. And as Jenny was going back to bed that night, she heard something hit the roof and roll. Could that have been what started the fire? It was also found that the phone wire was cut that night, meaning that whoever did it must have done it between when Jenny hung up the phone that night and the hour later when the fire started. Also, no screams or anything were heard from the kids the night of the fire, and you'd think if 5 kids were in that house, you would hear something. It's important to also note that George, the father, was a big part of the Italian community. There was a big one in that town. He himself had immigrated from Italy. George apparently had very strong political views that a lot of people did not agree with, and he was very vocal with these views, and it really angered people. And apparently, months before the fire, a salesman knocked on the door and asked George if he wanted to take out life insurance. George said, "No thank you," and this salesman straight up said, "I don't like your political views, your house is gonna burn down and your kids are gonna die." I think we got our guy. It's also important to note that there were tips all around where it happened from people saying that they saw the missing Sodder children. And I don't mean like a few. There were a lot of people claiming to have seen these kids. Another very odd point is that the Sodder family actually contacted the FBI asking for their help. The FBI actually said that they would help if the Fayetteville police station agreed. And the Fayetteville police station declined. The FBI. It's a bit suspicious. George and Jenny followed up on every single tip they got. They would travel hours on a single tip. In 1968, Jenny actually got a letter. It did not have a return address on it, and it was from Kentucky. In this letter held a picture of a man. He had the same hair and features as one of the missing children. They then sent a private detective, and he went missing. And that was it. That was the last lead they ever got. Both George and Jenny passed away without ever knowing the truth. Thanks for watching.
This is the exact moment that 18-year-old Samantha Koenig was abducted from a coffee stand in Alaska. At around 8 p.m. on February 1st, 2012, Samantha was kidnapped from the Common Grounds coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska by serial killer Israel Keyes. She had been working alone when security footage showed her being approached by Israel, who walked up to the window, pointed a gun at her, and demanded that she turn off the lights. He then bound her hands together, jumped through the window, stuffed napkins into her mouth, and forced her into his truck before taking her back to his house where he lived with his girlfriend and 10-year-old daughter. Once at home, he tied her up in a shed in his backyard, went inside to make sure his family was asleep, and then went back out to the shed where he sexually assaulted and strangled Samantha to death. Israel then left her body in the shed and proceeded to go on a 2-week-long cruise with his family. Samantha was reported missing the next day, and the FBI quickly got involved, but unfortunately it was too late. When Israel returned home from the cruise, he decided to take a ransom photo of Samantha in order to receive money from her parents. He promised that she'd be unharmed if they sent him money. But in order to provide proof of life, he needed to make it look like she was still alive, so he proceeded to braid her hair and do her makeup, and he even went as far as sewing her eyelids open with fishing line. But in all reality, she had already been deceased for 2 weeks. On February 24th, Israel texted Samantha's boyfriend using her phone and told him to look for a package in a local park, and it was then that the Anchorage police found the ransom photo and the note demanding $30,000. And just wanting their daughter back safely, Samantha's parents paid him the money by depositing it into her bank account that was linked to her debit card, which he had stolen from her. Sadly, Samantha would not be returned to her family, as Israel then dismembered her body and disposed of her remains in Matanuska Lake. Shortly after, he started using her debit card, which alerted authorities right away. He would disguise himself while withdrawing the money, but one ATM security camera caught him driving away in a white Ford Focus, and it was because of this that he would soon be caught. On March 13, 2012, a Texas state trooper located the car in question and started following him until he was speeding, at which point he pulled him over. Inside the car was Israel, and authorities then found Samantha's debit card and cell phone. Once arrested, Israel confessed to Samantha's murder, but he also confessed to much more. He claimed to have started killing people in 1998, and by the time he kidnapped Samantha, he claimed to have also killed 10 other people in multiple states. While incarcerated, Israel took his life by attempted strangulation and using a razor blade. Before he died, he drew 11 skulls in his own blood and wrote, quote, "We are one," end quote.
Well, we turn to our top story this evening. A Bradley University graduate has been sentenced to prison for 14 years. Last year, on April 10th, Stephanie Melgoza was convicted of driving while drunk and crashing into 2 people, killing them. Those people are 43-year-old Andrea Rosewitz of Ohio and 55-year-old Paul Prowent of Seattle. She crashed near Throttle Bar and Grill in East Peoria. Melgoza entered a blind plea. That's one without an agreement to 2 counts of aggravated DUI and 2 counts of aggravated reckless driving. Melgoza's lawyer says that this was an accident and not a deliberate crime.
There's sexual assault, gunplay, home invasion. Those are similar type punishments, Class X felonies. But you know when you're doing those, there's going to be a bad outcome. You don't know when you're drinking and driving it's going to result in a bad outcome. And I think most people feel they're going to get home and go under the radar and make it home safely.
Family members of Rosewitz and Prowent chastised Melgoza, saying it was her decision to drink and drive that night. They wanted the maximum sentence of 28 years behind bars for her, saying it was necessary to protect the public.
Trigger warning, this video is about women who choose predators over their own children. We're going to start this series off with a woman who appeared on the Dr. Phil show. The episode was called Saving Grace. Grace was her 6-year-old granddaughter. They were appearing on the Dr. Phil show because her husband, Grandpa, had essayed their 6-year-old granddaughter, Grace. So this all started when Grace spent the night with her grandparents. Grandma was giving Grace a bath. When Grandma noticed that Grace was very red, irritated, and rashy down there. In other words, Grace flat out tells her grandma that her papa did this to her. So what do you think Grandma did? A. She calls the police. B. She calls Grace's parents. C. She confronts her husband. And none of the above. Grandma does not say a word. She puts Grace to bed. The next day, Grace goes back home to her parents' house. Grace's father is their son. Grandma does not tell her son or her daughter-in-law anything. So a few days go by, and Grace ends up telling her mother what her papa did to her. God bless this mother right here. So mom has her daughter tell her dad what grandpa did, and says that she's going to call the police and file charges. So Dad tells Dr. Phil that he didn't cry for his daughter when he found out what Grandpa had done to her, but instead, he cried for his father because he was afraid his father was going to jail. Just stop and think about that. He did not cry when he found out that his father had essayed his 6-year-old daughter, but he did cry thinking about his father going to jail. So Grace's mother calls the grandmother. She says, "Y'all better get a good defense attorney because I'm pressing charges." And then Grandma says, "What are you people trying to do to us? Grandpa can just apologize to Grace and everything will be okay. He loves Grace so much, he didn't mean to do this to her." So after confronting her husband's parents, the mom finds out that Grandma knew about it days prior and didn't say anything to anyone. Grandma says, "Y'all are being dramatic." Then Grace tells her parents details about the attack. I'm gonna have to use code words. Grandpa said being with their daughter made him feel young, like he was back in high school. It was very exciting for him. So when he put his hand on her leg, something told him to go further. He says that Grace didn't push him away, so she must have liked what he was doing. So he became more aggressive with her. I can't say what he did, but it goes beyond horrifying. So Grandma says, but it's not like he R-worded her, he didn't penetrate. Yeah, she said that, but he actually did digitally. But she says that's not the R word, and that she thinks they should be allowed to see their granddaughter. They should be allowed to keep her overnight, and that she just won't leave him alone with the child anymore. And that Grandpa should just apologize to Grace and everyone move past this. She says that Mom's just making a big stink and being dramatic. That, my friends, is called a woman protecting a predator. She defends him, she protects him. She's choosing him over her children and grandchildren. She holds his hand throughout the episode. If only she had protected her granddaughter the way she protects him. Grandpa was convicted, but he got out. She should have been arrested too because she's just as guilty as he is. Afterwards, he exploited and profited from this situation.
It's got me shaking just thinking about it, that something like this could happen.
Michael Fontenelle and Hannah Landon were a couple that lived in Harahan, Louisiana. So we don't really know how long they were dating, but they were living together with Michael's kids. Now, one of those kids happened to be a 6-year-old by the name of Bella Fontenelle. So 6-year-old Bella Fontenelle was a kindergartner, and she can be described as a joyous little girl. Every birthday, Bella dressed up, and her family is saying that Bella loved to sing and she loved to dance. Now, although Hannah was dating Bella's dad, Hannah and Bella's mother, Jennifer, did not have the best relationship. In 2021, the police were called when an altercation ensued between Jennifer and Hannah. So Jennifer, which is Bella's biological mom, she attended a swim meet in which Hannah was there as well. So it's being said that when Jennifer tried to hug a child, Hannah wouldn't let her. So what's even crazier is in these documents, it's saying that Hannah wouldn't even let Jennifer interact with her daughter Bella because it was Michael's time to have her, like with the custody agreement. So basically they're at this swim meet. Jennifer is there. She sees her daughter and Hannah is like, no, you can't talk to her. You can't interact with her. It's not your time. Which that is beyond crazy. It shows jealousy. It shows that Hannah felt some type of way about Jennifer. Now, the craziest part about this story is Hannah and Michael lived only a street over away from where Jennifer lived. So you would think that if there's no bad blood between Michael and Jennifer, this would be an ideal situation. You have your ex living about a block away. The kids are with you sometimes. The kids are with her sometimes. But this was not all the case. So on Tuesday, April 25th, Michael came home kind of late from work. Michael went to bed, but when he woke up Wednesday morning, he noticed that his girlfriend Hannah and his daughter Bella were missing. So he instantly contacted police because he didn't know where his girlfriend or his daughter was, and police instantly began their search. So we found out that Hannah went to the police station around 12 a.m. and police thought she was having a mental breakdown, so they sent her to a hospital. So while all of this is going on, Hannah is in the hospital, Michael is looking for Bella, and nobody knows where she is. Now, remember I said Bella's mother, which is Jennifer, she stays about a street over, so police went to her house. So when police arrived at Jennifer's house, they noticed a 10-gallon bucket that you would use for chlorine for a pool. Now, once police went up to this bucket to open it up to see what was in it, they made a shocking discovery. In this bucket, they found the body of 6-year-old Bella Fontanelle in the fetal position, and she was dead. Now, after reviewing ring cam footage in this area, that's when police made another shocking discovery. So around 9:30 p.m. that night, a ring cam footage actually caught Hannah on it, and she was walking with this same 10-gallon bucket. Now, y'all, for some reason, mysteriously enough, this lady had on some white high-heel boots. She was walking through the neighborhood like nothing was going on, walking towards Jennifer's home. And y'all, she was toting the 10-gallon bucket that Bella was found in. Police now know she is responsible for the death of 6-year-old Bella Fontanelle. So after seeing this disturbing and tragic video, police then arrest Hannah Landon.
Our attention was drawn very quickly to the missing girlfriend, who is now missing in action, right? We could not necessarily find her.
Jefferson Parish Sheriff Joe Lopinto says the father's girlfriend, Hannah Landon, also known as Bunak Lim and Bunak Landon, was found at a local hospital and placed into JPSO custody Wednesday afternoon. She'll be booked with first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. Lopinto wouldn't speculate on her mental state because investigators still had yet to interview her.
Now, you guys, this was cold and this was calculated. I don't care what anybody says, this woman did this completely out of jealousy. Now, this could just be me, but whenever you look at the pictures, you see her trying to upstage the daughter. In situations like this where the little girls would dress up, she would dress up as well. And another thing is the fact that she dropped this body off at the mother's home, she was trying to have that last win. She wanted to win and she wanted the mother to hurt. Now, this is a sad and this is a very sick situation. This little girl did not deserve to go through what she went through, and I'm afraid of what she might have went through before all of this even happened. Now, an autopsy revealed that she was strangled and she was beaten to death before being stuffed into this 10-gallon bucket. Now, authorities are saying that they don't believe Michael had anything to do with this, and they don't believe the mother had anything to do with this. This was strictly Hannah. Now, y'all, I don't know if there was signs before this. Like I said before, me looking at those pictures, she really gave off jealousy. But you have to be careful who you leave your children with. After that incident at the swim meet when she wouldn't even let me interact with my child, that would have been it for me. It's not bitter, it's not anything like that, but when there's children involved, you always have to be on your toes. Now, I want you guys to comment below and let me know your thoughts on this case. Do you believe this woman had a mental breakdown, or do you believe this was pure jealousy? And also, I want to know, do you guys think that stuff was going on before this happened? Comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this case. Justice for Bella.
We're a small town. We're a safe town. And I just want the citizens to know that my heart and my prayers go out to the family of this child. This is a senseless type incident that happened. But I can assure you that the Darien Police Department and the Sheriff's Office are there for the family.
you.